we all know there's this Notion database security limit that you can't go more granular than, and it's a problem. Like, it limits the number of use cases you can put into Notion. And the way I would say it is, if you give somebody view rights to a database, they get view rights or edit rights, whatever the rights are, to the entire database. And so if the database needs privacy inside of itself, like this user can see these records and this user can see some other records, but they shouldn't be able to see each other's records, that's a no-go situation for putting it into Notion. True?
True with an asterisk.
Okay.
Because technically you can do it, but there's no like automated programmable way to do it, right? You can't set up a rule to say if this person is in this property, they should have access to today's point date. The API also can't change page permissions or database item permissions. That could have been a workaround, but neither of those things are available today. But you can manually do it. If you're talking about tasks and it's something you're going to be creating hundreds or thousands of records, probably not. But if it's a notes database, for example, and you just want one note that's a recurring note to be private, like a one-on-one notes, you could always make that specific page in the database private. So that way only the people that have access to it would see it.
Right. So you're basically you're applying database permissions, but then inside of the database, one record, you're forking off the permissions for that one record.
Right. So that's kind of what I alluded to. Sorry, maybe industry terminology. Whitelist versus blacklist is like security firewall terminology, right? So whitelist is by default allow everything. So I'm going to give Myers permissions to view this database. That's whitelist model. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to specifically say Myers cannot see this one record. Whereas blacklist model would say, I'm not going to give Myers access to anything in the database or the database at all, but I'm going to give him access to this one specific page. And that would be the blacklist model. So by default, everything's kind of, all your permissions are denied.
Okay. And you can do that inside of Notion if you're willing to manually grant
Correct.
record by record access. So there's some scalability questions there, concerns there. Let me tell you a situation that I've got right now and see because I think I'm stuck on something and I'm not quite sure how to advise my client. So here's the situation. So annual strategic objectives, we've got a database for that roll down into corporate goals. So all these are public. They're all intended to be public. I've got strict permissions about who can edit them, but the purpose of these strategic objective databases and corporate goal databases that support a strategic objective, and then department goals that support a corporate goal, is to create this flow down cultural transparency of what are we saying is important as a company and what are we working on as a company and as a department. So that's great. And this company's really embraced it. It looks great. Everybody can see what's going on. It's great. Now, naturally, they want to take departmental goals and go down a level and say, well, these are the individual goals or tasks that are supporting the departmental goals. And they have said, but it is a requirement that a manager should be able to comment or interact with one of their employees' individual goals with privacy. So are you saying that if we're willing to absorb the manual cost, which is not trivial, because it's 150 people with, let's say, 5 goals each, 4 times a quarter, so 20 goals, 20 individual goals a year at least, times 150 people is, are you good at quick math? 3,000?
Yeah. Regardless, I mean, that's the numbers are variables, right? Because what happens if they scale and expand or whatever. The thing that I would say is the comments and interaction that needs to be kept private. Is that something that should be done at the task level, or is that going to be done at the goal level?
Well, and they don't even want let me actually go up a level. They don't even want people to see each other's individual goals, because one of the individual goals could be acquire this company, or something where the goal is too sensitive for the entire company to see.
Right. So, yeah, I would say you'd have to do that manually where you would go in and say, like, this specific goal should be private, only this person has access to it, and this person has access to it. Whereas if it was something where, like, let's say you have tasks and all tasks are, more generic, and visibility is not an issue, but you want specific comments on that task to be private. In that case, I would say, why not create like a separate database that's related to the task that is essentially private, and then that's just a relation. But and that would maybe solve that problem. But yeah, I mean, if you want OKRs essentially, like, or whatever your goal is and your key result or your task or your action items, and you want some of them to be private, some of them to be public, you'd have to go in and manually set that up, basically.
Okay, well, that's better than there being no solution. It's just
Yeah.
that's a decent
The
amount of
other,
manual work.
yeah, the other scenario where this has come up for me is like tasks, right? Is you have like your team tasks, but then people also have private tasks. Sometimes the private tasks are totally private, like walk the dog, and it has nothing to do with work, and they want it to be private. And sometimes it's a specific thing that they need to do, but also they also want to be able to relate it to a project. And so the solution that I've used for that is on like the personal dashboards for each individual, they would have their own child essentially task database that would have a one-way relation to projects. So in
Mm-hmm.
that case, all of that database is private. And if they wanted to, have one task be able to be seen by their manager, or the whole database be able to be seen by their manager, or something in that like that, then obviously you could set that up at the database level. So that's another pretty common
Yeah.
example.